Over the last 7 years, we have circumnavigated the world on our 37-foot sailboat Florence. Now, it is time for a change of tack.
We are setting out to face the challenges of wind and tide as we attempt to circumnavigate our home country. Join us as we explore the coastline of the UK, from picture-perfect seaside towns to the wild isles of Scotland.
This is Sailing Around Britain. We're sailing on north from Fair Isle to the Shetland Isles and the most northern point of the British Isles. Shetland is made up of over 100 islands, but most are uninhabited, an ideal cruising ground with lots of anchorages to explore.
Well, we're having a beautiful sail for most of the leg here, but as we're approaching Shetland, the sea state has just gone all over the shop and the wind has eased off. So we're getting thrown around, and that's throwing the wind out the spinnaker because there isn't that much of it to begin with. So I'm having to hand trim the kite just to keep us moving through. We were only doing 2 knots before, now I'm managing to keep us at 3.5. We've also got the tide sluicing past Shetland, so we're actually kind of pointing way below where we want to go because we're being taken sideways. We just need to sail through this current. We're staying 2 miles offshore to avoid the tidal overfalls. But if we can just get through this current, then we should get a bit calmer up the west coast of Shetland to where our anchorage is. But it's very uncomfortable at the moment.
We're aiming for the island of St Ninians, which is on the west coast of Shetland, and linked to it by a very special causeway.
We eventually had to give up on sailing and motor the last 6 miles to our chosen anchorage, hoping that we had chosen wisely for protection from the North Atlantic swells which were crashing against the rocky shore of Shetland.
Thankfully, St Ninians gave us the shelter we hoped for, and we were able to anchor safely to enjoy this wonderful bay.
St Ninians Isle is linked to the mainland by this fabulous beach. This is called a Tombolo, and it is reputed to be the best of its type in the British Isles. It is formed by the Atlantic waves, which are split by St Ninians Isle and then sweep round each side of it evenly, pushing pebbles and shells in front of them until they meet again to form this beach and causeway. But this is sailing in Scotland. We are at 60 degrees north. Calm winds and clear blue skies are rare here, and the weather is changeable. The latest forecast is showing strong winds gusting to 40 knots, with a direction swinging from southeast through south all the way to northwest. We need to find an anchorage with more all-round protection.
We've chosen to head to Papastour, a small island to the west of Shetland. We've timed our departure carefully, as we need to arrive at the Sound of Papa, between Papastour and mainland Shetland, with the tide in our favour, as it accelerates through the narrow gap. That meant that we could not arrive until the front edge of the wind and rain had also arrived.
With Florence securely anchored in Papastour, we settled down to catch up on our video editing on board whilst Florence swung around her anchor.
The weather for the last few days has been much more like what we were expecting for Shetland, in that we've had a fair amount of rain and also wind. So unfortunately we didn't get to see much of Papastour because we were just hunkered down sheltering from the weather. So the weather's cleared, and today we have the choice of either having a walk around the island or setting off and having downwind sailing to the next point that we're heading to. So we've taken the option to sail on. And today we are heading to the most northern point of Shetland and around a very famous rock called Muckle Flugga. It's not just the most northern point of Shetland, but it's also the most northern point of the UK, including all of the outlying islands. So yeah, as is normally the case for sailing around here, we are pushing to try and make the tide, to make sure that we get to Muckle Flugga before the tide turns against us. But at the moment we're making really good progress. So the wind is forecast to drop off, and the waves have certainly reduced in size from when we set off this morning. So hopefully we'll be able to keep some speed up. We're making a fairly big hop up the coast this time because unfortunately the wind direction means that the anchorages that we wanted to stop in that look absolutely beautiful along this coast are not going to be sheltered over the next few days. So we're just going to make as much progress as we can. But the anchorage that we're heading to is also supposed to be really beautiful. It's Hermanus Point, which is a nature reserve and worth a visit in its own right, supposedly.
It's a beautiful coastline here in Shetland. You don't really get to appreciate it from the land. We've done some coastal walks and you see a bit of it, but you really get to experience it sailing along it. And thankfully the weather today is fairly calm, so we're able to get quite close and see all the stacks. But it's not just the landscape that I'm looking forward to up here at the northern point. We had a report from a Swiss boat that we bumped into that they saw a pod of orca there, which I would absolutely love to see. Apparently they're safe orca though, they're not the type that like chewing on boats' rudders. So yeah, that'll be amazing if we actually get to see them up here. Fingers crossed.
Talking of boats, we haven't seen any other sailing boats for about 4 days now, which is really strange for being in UK waters. And we've only seen, I think, one other British boat in the whole of Shetland so far. Apparently it's much more frequented by Scandinavian boats coming across from obviously Norway and Sweden.
Beautiful! Calming down nicely just as we get there.
So we've come up to the nature reserve on Hermanus Point, and this whole headland is a nature reserve, mostly for birds. They have 100,000 birds that visit this headland every year. And this particular section of cliff is one of the gannet trees. So you can see behind me all of the gannets circling around, and they're one of the biggest birds, I think in the North Atlantic, but certainly that we've seen on the sea. We could smell them as we were walking up the headland before we could even see them. They're really impressive. Apparently they can fly up to 60 miles an hour, and they have really strong skulls that allow them to take the impact of hitting the water at such speed. So these can dive down to about 20 meters, And a puffin apparently can reach somewhere between 50 and 75 metres from a duck dive, not even piercing the water. I'm getting quite into the birding. Well, the fog cleared a bit and we realised we're in totally the wrong place, just further along the cliff. This is where the real gannet tree is. As you can see, there's so many of them. I wouldn't even know where to start estimating how many there are. Need a wide angle lens just to get them all in.
So this is Muckle Flugga Rock and the lighthouse, which is the northernmost lighthouse in the UK. That rock itself that the lighthouse is on is not actually the northernmost point. The northernmost point is the rock that's just to the right there, which is called Outstack. Now, coming here with Florence is the second time I've been round this rock. The first time was back in 2006 on a non-stop race around the British Isles on a 38-foot boat. But when we came round that time, it was dense fog and you couldn't see a thing. All we saw was all the gannets just coming in and out of the fog. You could only see about 2 boat lengths. So it's been brilliant to go around this time and actually see it for a change. The lighthouse here is built, thinking about the 1800s. It's 60 metres up on that rock, but in the winter when you get the bad storms, the waves that break on the rocks are so big that the spray from those waves hits the top of that lighthouse. And if you go directly north from here, there's nothing between us and the North Pole. So here we're about 60 or 61 degrees north, and so we're not actually that far from the Arctic Circle because that starts at 66 degrees north. But this is the furthest north we are going to go on our trip this season. Next season, we're going to head up there and into the Arctic Circle.
Next time, we experience both Viking history and nature, as we have some beautiful sailing, zigzagging between the islands down Shetland's east coast.
For extra updates in between these bi-weekly videos, and to find out what we're up to in real time, head over to Patreon and join the crew. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to make sure that you don't miss the next episode here on YouTube.
Continuing our voyage on Florence would not be possible without the support of our patrons. Thank you to all of you, and especially to our star patrons.